So I'm a little irked at this Penguins Collectibles X-Men book that we've been going through. I'm excited that we're going over X-Men issue 14 from 1965. This is the first appearance of the Sentinels. But what pisses me off is in jumping from, what was it, issue 8 or whatever it is, or issue 9 to 14, we miss out on the first appearance of the Juggernaut. Ugh. But in between, when they do big jumps like this, there's a read up. I kind of skimmed it, but from what I understand, I guess they wanted to kind of point out certain aspects of what happened during this time period, and they were talking about they called it the flaws in the Marvel method, which was how Stan would kind of give plot points and then give the art people more creative control. And from what I'm reading here, they were talking about how when he would do that, it would cause sometimes confusion. So, for example, I think it was issue 9 where Beast left and Cyclops reaches out to Xavier, and Xavier says he's on the tail of Lucifer, and I'll tell you about it someday. The plot point for Stan was that Lucifer was supposed to be the one that crippled him, which I think later down the road they've kind of established that. But Jack Kirby wanted to introduce the Juggernaut and basically allude to the fact that it was the Juggernaut that crippled Xavier, so that there's this conflict within the family. So, or not, yeah, within the Xavier family. So, the last couple of pages on this read-up state that they kind of backed off from doing, like, kind of stepped away from the books, because the reason that was getting stretched so thin is because they were doing Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Avengers, and all that stuff. And so they kind of backed off of the X-Men a little bit, giving more focus on their main titles that they've been working on long enough. And in doing so, it kind of allowed the book to breathe, because I think moving forward, they said that Stan Lee kind of gave more of the writing credits to Roy Thomas. So I think that's why in this collected trade we got 14 next. But all that aside, and kind of understanding what they were doing, they still should have given us the first appearance of the Juggernaut, because it kind of doesn't make sense going from 9 to now where it says, among stalk us the Sentinels. And it just says here, the aftermath with the battle is the time to rest and heal your wounds. So it is with the X-Men, having finally defeated the deadly Juggernaut last issue. We now find them taking recuperative therapy under the watchful eye of their brilliant leader, Professor Charles Xavier, little dreaming of the incredible danger that lies await for them in an unexpected source. And now let the wonderment begin. Now, working on this book, the fabulous fantasy fathered by your fearless Marvel madmen, Stan Lee, DS, Doctor of Story, Jack Kirby, DL, Dean of Layout, Jay Gavin, MA, Master of Art, V. Coiletta, BI, Bachelor of Inking, and Artie Simek, TOL, Tired of Lettering. I miss little things like that. But look at how the artwork, I guess, kind of giving them a chance to step back. Look at how more dynamic it is starting to become compared to the more earlier work. You can really see how Jack Kirby was really starting to get into the pocket of the art style and really starting to show. But while they're recuperating and everyone's starting to feel like their old selves again, and then there's another issue in the, let's just say it here. Jean says, I hope for your sake that Kazar doesn't hear you. He says he probably won't, for he was seen under the South Pole in issue number 10. So I'm assuming that's where we see the Savage Land, and there's a one-shot with Kazar. And that's, I kind of wish they would have just slapped it all together. But anyway, as they're finally starting to feel like their old selves, but perhaps the X-Men would not be so quite joyful if they were aware of a press conference which is taking place at the moment in another city. And this is the first appearance of Trask. Dr. Trask, do you realize what you're saying? As one of our greatest anthropologists, your declaration will shock the world. The world must be shocked. The danger was never greater. And this is where, for me, because I always kind of bought into what Boulevard Trask was in later issues, but going back, it never really occurred to me that he was initially an anthropologist. He wasn't a great scientific or machinist like Tony Stark. He just had an idea about the mutant menace. He says, we've been so busy worrying about Cold Wars, Hot Wars, atom bombs, and the like, that we've overlooked the greatest menace of all. Mutants walk among us, hidden, unknown, waiting for their moment to strike. They are mankind's most deadly enemy, for only they have the actual power to conquer the human race. And even as we speak, they are out there scheming, plotting, planning, thinking we don't suspect. But there's still time to smash them if we strike now. Wow, wait till this hits the front pages. And so we see the press rolling. I kind of wished, and I don't know if Stanley was ready to cross this over, but where it says the Daily Globe, I wish I would have said the Daily Bugle. But that aside, as everyone begins to recuperate again, and real quick, before we get into all this, I love how we kind of see how everyone has their own different ways that they deal with stuff. So like Scott says, it wouldn't be much of a vacation if I had to spend it in this costume. Luckily, the professor had this pair of special sunglasses made for me. I'll shut my eyes now while I remove my helmet, because the lens automatically raises as I lift my visor. I shudder to think what would happen if I ever accidentally opened my eyes while they had no protective gear. I live in perpetual fear of such a moment. But as the scholarly X-Men known as the Beast has a somewhat different nature, being a mutant can be very vexing when it's time to don one's street clothes. Especially when one possesses a pair of pedal extremities like the size of mine. There, do you have enough breathing space, sweeties? These specially hinged shoes are so expensive it would be cheaper to walk on my hands, though somewhat less glorious. So you kind of see how they have to adjust in order to live the way they are. So they're going on vacation. That's kind of what at the end, as Xavier said, you've been through enough. Go rest. Your semester's over, however you want to say it. But then he hits the paper, and he sees these propagandist photos of what the world would look like if mutants ruled it, showing them enslaved, of course, very much alluding to images that you would have seen either in ancient Rome or Germany in the 30s and 40s. And Xavier's thinking, even now it may be too late to stop the wheels of persecution that have been set in motion, but I must make that attempt. The strange theories of Dr. Trask are a greater threat to my X-Men than any foe they've ever faced before. And so he wants to set up basically a discussion between him and Trask on the news. And this is where he says, I want to introduce my Sentinels. And I could see where Kirby was kind of getting the idea for them. But you can see how they were so much more bulky and more alien-esque looking than we see them now. And I like the newer designs, honestly. But just to see them in their early Genesis phase like this is absolutely amazing. Now, spoilers if you guys have never read this. Pause this, go get the book, come back, and you're back. The Sentinels immediately turn on Trask. And right here, this is where Xavier even points out that Trask isn't a great scientist. He goes, Trask was an anthropologist, not a robotic expert. His knowledge of cybernetic brains was inadequate. His Sentinels are out of control. And so he calls out to the X-Men. And right when they hit the scene, they may be able, and just like with true Sentinel powers, the X-Men are able to get like one up on them before the Sentinels learn and adapt and begin to take everyone down one by one. And I love the artwork here, especially when all of them begin to fire on Archangel, or not Archangel at this time, Angel, and the dynamicness. You can see how Kirby's really starting to grow as an artist here. I just love all the styles here. Compared to how we'd see Warren fly in older books, let's get a little further back in the time. Just look at how much the quality had improved over time, just to accumulate to this. Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, there's not a whole lot more I want to say about it. I don't want to spoil it because this was a damn good read. And the way that the X-Men, thinking they're going to have a vacation, only to be thrown back into the mix against a foe more deadly than the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and to actually get a moment to see the first appearance of Master Mold. Everything about this book encompasses what we'd see in the early Genesis of the X-Men. Highly recommend it. If you guys have never read these early X-Men books, this Penguin collection is definitely the way to go. Though I wish that they wouldn't have left out so many different issues. But that's just me. I'd probably just have to break down and eventually grab, an omnibus or something like that. Or what I'm trying to do, which I don't think I'll ever be able to do, is get them individually. Yeah, that's kind of a pipe dream of mine. But nonetheless, X-Men issue 14, highly recommend it. gorgeous artwork, great fighting styles, everything that you want in an X-Men comic. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, if you got the ducats, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and grab an original copy. If not, go grab this collected trade. Definitely worth it, and you learn a few things that you never thought you'd see before. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next subscribe, that way as I continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.